Welcome to Pontification Nation. I am Ricky Skittle, your host, coming to you live from my mother's basement as always. We've got a great show lined up for you today. We are going to continue our discussion into Governor Ralph Northam, Planned Parenthood, infanticide, what is really going on in this country and who is benefiting. Okay, so we've had our previous two videos. If you don't know what I'm talking about right now, please go to the landing page. You can watch the original video that I did on infanticide, and then I also did a Governor Northam addendum after his first comments and his apology on Friday night. Saturday he came out and said that this was not him in these pictures. He's not sure where they came from. He does not have the memory of this. So what I'm trying to figure out right now when I sit down and look at all this is, what is going on here? And who's benefiting? And how is this another symptom and sign of the silent civil war that we talked about yesterday in the Sunday reading that is actually taking place in this country right now as we speak? So I'm on the record as saying there's no way that he makes it probably a week, and he would probably resign on Monday. He hasn't resigned yet today, but we're still early in the day, so I'm sure we'll find out more as this goes on, as today moves on. So let's talk about what's going on. You know, look at the other videos if you really want an in-depth view on this, but at a high level, what's going on right now is this man, Ralph Northam, came out after Delegate Tran gave a bill to the committee in Virginia that wanted to legalize partial birth abortion all the way up to and including through birth. And he defended what that looked like and also described what it was like. He's a pediatric neurosurgeon, has probably been a part of these things throughout his career because, if you're doing brain surgery on babies, you're probably dealing with really sick babies who don't have a lot of chance in life. Now, why now and who benefits? So let's talk about first who doesn't benefit. Republican Party does not benefit from this. While it does give the national news media something to chew on and things for people to talk about, they're not directly benefiting. They would benefit from this if it were during an election cycle. This picture most likely has been around for a while. Dan Bongino said he saw this last year. The op researchers in the Gillespie campaign, because Governor Northam is a first term, he's not even into his second year of governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia. So Gillespie, the person he ran against, his team said they never saw this photo. Northam, infamously had a video about Gillespie chasing down people of color. After the Charlottesville thing, Gillespie ended up losing, most likely probably because of the power of that video, because they painted him as a racist, but here we find out we know who the racist truly was all the time. Remember the Democrat plan, the Saul Alinsky plan. Project. Do the dirty work and then make it look like your opponent is the one doing the dirty stuff. It's the same thing that's going on in Muellergate and Russiagate, right? That's their playbook. Who also doesn't benefit from this? The Democrats. The Democrats do not benefit from this. This is an unmitigated disaster for them. Not only is all of their dirty laundry on air for the whole country to see regarding how they feel about human life and what their regard for it is, but they also now have to deal with, they have a racist governor. Right? So they're not benefiting from this. They're all trying to get their presidential campaigns started. This is a big nuisance for them, as you see how fast every one of them on Thursday came out and defended this bill and this person. Friday night, they all came out and called for him to resign. Saturday, he came out and changed his story. Why is that happening? The people of Virginia are certainly not benefiting from this poop show. We're trying not to use curse language on this show because we want to be family friendly, but this is ridiculous and it's a disgrace. The Commonwealth of Virginia and the people of Virginia are not benefiting here. So who is benefiting? Not Northam. Lieutenant Governor, you could say he probably has some benefit in this. I don't know the relationship between the two men. I know that there's some stories about Northam leaving the lieutenant governor off his flyer, and they're trying to make that as he's being a racist, etc. But you know who's really benefiting from this? Planned Parenthood is benefiting a significant amount, because the amount of money that they were going to have to spend, like seriously, they gave him $3 million for his campaign. We'll talk about that in a second. The amount of money they were going to spend to have to refute all of this, and then they'd have to go lobby in the states, because we've talked about this on Friday. We have New Mexico, Vermont, Rhode Island, and a few others. There's states across the nation right now that are trying to make the exact same thing that they were putting forward here in Virginia legal, right? So they're starting to fight this, make this case that it's okay to murder babies after they're born because you don't like the way they look. It's not okay to murder babies, because it's not okay to murder anyone because you don't like the way they look. We have a term for that. It's called hate crime. But in any case, Planned Parenthood is benefiting from this, and they're the only group of people. I mean, besides the lieutenant governor, I don't want to disparage anyone individually, though. I don't know him, and I can't give you any kind of facts that would lead me to believe that he did this. But Planned Parenthood goes from, they spend $3 million on him, they go from defending him one day to calling for his resignation the next day, and it conveniently happens to be very beneficial for them for him to resign. That's just, my opinion. But the facts do seem to give a little bit of credence to my opinion. Planned Parenthood is fine with infanticide, but a racist photo is a bridge too far. This is from PJ Media. In a matter of days, Planned Parenthood went from vociferously defending Governor Ralph Northam to demanding his resignation. Earlier this week, Northam defended infanticide, the killing of an infant who survives a late-term abortion. Planned Parenthood rushed to his defense, yet a mere hours after news of a racist photo broke, the abortion giant turned on one of its stalwart defenders. As the nation's largest provider of reproductive health care, we have a responsibility to advocate for all patients and provide compassionate health care to all people who walk through our doors, Dr. Lena Wen, Planned Parenthood's president, wrote in a statement. There is no place for Governor Rotham's racist actions or language. He must step down as governor. The people of Virginia need to be able to trust that their leaders will fight for them and support policies that protect their health, safety, and value their communities. The Northam actions have put that in doubt. Okay, so this is the part that I really want to focus on. Most Americans think life begins in the womb, and most Americans oppose third trimester abortions. It is perfectly logical for the law to require a second and third opinion for something Americans think involves the intentional killing of a human baby. In its thread, Planned Parenthood included a story arguing Northam was not advocating for infanticide. As Planned Parenthood's Virginia chapter went further to defend Northam, Thursday it posted a glowing tweet. Dr. Northam is taking Virginia in the right direction. Conservative politicians want to ban abortion and take us backwards. Two days later, the organization called on the governor to resign over his medical school yearbook that shows men in blackface and a Ku Klux Klan hood directly under his name. Northam apologized for the photo, but then later argued that he was not in the picture. The photo is disturbing on many levels, even if Northam is not pictured in it, as he now claims, after having already apologized. He still presumably chose it for his page in the yearbook. This yearbook was from medical school, not high school or college. Finally, Northam won the 2017 governor's race against the Republican Ed Gillespie after branding Gillespie a racist and tying him to the white supremacist movement in Charlottesville, despite the fact that Gillespie immediately condemned the protesters. Furthermore, Northam won after Planned Parenthood's Virginia PAC spent $3 million supporting his campaign. This helps explain the governor's advocacy for so radical an abortion bill and Planned Parenthood's willingness to carry water for his infanticide comments. Yet the abortion giant was more than willing to abandon its $3 million investment over an offensive yearbook photo. Okay? This doesn't make sense. You don't abandon a $3 million investment over this photo, especially when the person is advocating for the policies that you want. What you do is you put this photo out into the national conversation so that the national conversation discontinues being about infanticide and killing babies in all of the other states in the union that have laws, that have bills in their legislature like this. Let's be honest with ourselves. How many of us know what bills are coming through our state legislature right now? We don't know that. We can't know. We don't pay attention to that kind of stuff. They don't want you knowing what they're trying to do. Now, why is all this going on? Where is it coming from? When did it start happening? I'm going to surprise you. This started last year in July of 2018 when Brett Kavanaugh was nominated to the Supreme Court. They immediately started fighting. You saw everything. I mean, it mobilized. They mobilized and moved and acted as people who were threatened, because they know, as we just discussed, that most people in America don't like this or believe it. Most people in America also don't have to live next to an abortion clinic. Most people in America don't have to see this stuff. And most people in America don't experience it. And most people in America say, you know what? Other people are free to do whatever they want. It's not really my business. Right? Until they start realizing that they pay for other people's abortions. Until they start realizing that people are having vanity abortions and they're killing children because they don't like the way they look or talk or what their prospects are going to be like. You know, this is insane. This is not right. So this started with Kavanaugh. And then Kavanaugh was appointed and confirmed. Then what happened? Ruth Bader Ginsburg in November falls and breaks her ribs. They find lung cancer. It's hidden from view. Nobody talks about it. And then stories start leaking out that she's not well. And I wish RBG the best. I pray for her speedy recovery and return to the court. But they have got to realize, if RBG goes and Trump gets his third appointment in 3 years, they're concerned about Roe, because they know that most people in the country don't like this or want it. That's why they did it through the courts and not the legislature. If they want this and they think everybody wants it and they think it's a reproductive right and a constitutional right, why don't they present putting a constitutional amendment on? Let's just settle it once and for all. Let's amend the Constitution to where people can murder babies up until 1 week old. Why don't they do that? If that's what it is, if it's a right, if it's a fundamental big R right, because they can't, because there's no support for that. People would freak out all over this country. So, they see RBG and what's going on with her as a serious threat to their viability, right? Serious threat to their viability. Now we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive into this Times article, because the Times article is actually going to prove everything that I just told you. Bear with me. How to prepare for Roe v. Wade assault. Now it says the Mercury right here, but it actually comes from the Times. I just don't like to, give money to them and their advertisers. So I just wanted to clarify that for you. Opponents of abortion have spent decades planning for a Supreme Court with a majority hostile to reproductive rights. So it's little surprise that with the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh in the fall, the necessary fifth vote, they've been quick to seize the moment. The anti-abortion movement has also spent those decades building vast fundraising and organizing network with the goals of securing an anti-abortion voting bloc and getting more like-minded judges at every level, and lawmakers and presidents into power. Mere weeks after Kavanaugh was sworn in, West Virginia and Alabama passed state constitutional amendments that could ban abortions if Roe v. Wade is overturned. Now, the way that our democracy works is that we elect people to create laws that we want. And if the people of West Virginia and Alabama didn't want this, it wouldn't be a constitutional amendment in that state. These people are trying to push their views on you and make you think that your views are wrong. And they're trying to do it in a way that is underhanded through the judicial system and not through the legislative system where they have to get elected and stand up. And you saw what happened with Tran. She crumpled under the real questions of what this bill would do. Now, those on the other side then need their own robust and creative playbook, which they have. Not just to fight back against attacks on reproductive freedom, but also to preemptively protect and expand those freedoms wherever possible. This is what the plan is, people. Ralph Northam just got in the way because we're not supposed to know. He should have never expounded on his personal situation. He should have never told what infanticide, what it really is and what it looks like. He should have never said that. If he didn't say any of that stuff, he'd still be president. This picture, or he'd still be governor. This picture would not be out. The Supreme Court will determine the fate of Roe, but its dismantling will start on the state level, requiring the effort to push back to be nationwide and expansive. Republican-controlled state legislatures are expected to put forth many pieces of anti-abortion legislation this year. Some are meant to directly challenge Roe, like recent proposals in Kentucky and Florida that ban abortion around the 6th week of pregnancy. That can translate to about 2 weeks after a missed menstrual period before many women even realize they're pregnant, let alone have time to consider an abortion. Ohio lawmakers have already voted for such a measure. Judges in lower courts, many appointed by President Trump, are expected to uphold more and more extreme anti-abortion laws. So even if the Supreme Court doesn't overturn Roe outright, the lower court could quietly roll back the Americans' constitutional right to the procedure. If it's a constitutional right, I implore you, why is it not in the Constitution? Women in many parts of the country are already finding it nearly impossible to exercise their reproductive rights. This is what we call it, reproductive rights. At least 424 anti-abortion bills have been passed at the state level since 2010, according to the Guttmacher Institute, which studies reproductive health. Now again, this is how our system works. We elect people who write the laws that we want. So if these are being presented in state legislation, there is support for them in the states, or else the representatives would get voted out. As a result, 43% of all reproductive aged women, 29 million people, now live in areas that are hostile to abortion rights. At least now they're saying abortion. It's not reproductive rights, it's abortion rights. And they aren't rights. Including 7 states that have just 1 abortion clinic left. How many people are in those states and how many people get abortions? I mean, seriously, it doesn't even mean anything the way that they just said that. Given this bleak state of affairs, it's all more important to showcase efforts to support rights on the state level that could serve as models as the fights move into new legislatures. For instance, New York legislators are expected to pass the Reproductive Health Care Act on Tuesday, the 46th anniversary of Roe v. Wade. This bill would wipe out the anachronistic law from the books, decriminalize abortion in the state, and ensure that women in New York have full protections guaranteed under Roe. The bill would also close a cruel loophole, one that requires women who need abortions later in pregnancy, often, but not always, because doctors discovered fatal fetal anomalies, to travel out of state and pay $10,000 or more out of pocket to get the medical attention they need. I love how they talk about this. I mean, I've had children, and you do testing all through pregnancy. You know about this stuff way before the 3rd trimester, most of it. I love how they call it fatal fetal anomalies. I mean, what is that even? Baby's alive. While blue states are locking down reproductive rights, tougher fights are breaking out in red and purple states. I wonder why, because the people don't want this. A lawsuit filed last week in Pennsylvania seeks to overturn the state's ban on using state Medicaid funds to pay for abortion. If successful, it could help thousands more women each year afford an abortion. This case is evidence that the central inequity around abortion It's easy for women with means to get an abortion while poor women are at the mercy of statutes that restrict their rights. That's because only 16 states allow women who rely on Medicaid, in other words, poor women, to use that coverage to pay for an abortion. Such lawsuits can be long shots, but they're shots worth taking, as in Wisconsin, where Planned Parenthood is suing to repeal several anti-abortion laws enacted under former Governor Scott Walker, a Republican. Similarly, bills with little chance of passing can still have value. In the deep red bastions of Missouri and Texas, lawmakers like Rep. Jessica Farrar, Democrat, Houston, have introduced legislation to repeal abortion restrictions and expand the access. Meanwhile, Texas just got an injunction on Planned Parenthood to quit using Medicaid for funds because they're selling fetal tissue for profit. Okay, that's what they're doing. They abort the babies and then they take the pieces of the babies and sell them to medical research firms. That's what this is. It is a business. This is not about constitutional rights. Such bills may be unlikely to be signed into law, but they raise awareness of an issue that many Americans have long ago tuned out because it doesn't apply to them because they would never get an abortion. In these states, these bills can help change the conversation around abortion, said Elizabeth Nash, Senior State Issues Manager at the Guttmacher Institute. There may be a fine line between gimmicks and strategy, but abortion rights supporters have spent too long on the defensive, while anti-abortion forces have put substantial pressure on all three branches of government. It isn't too late to wipe outdated laws off the books and make the procedure more accessible to low-income women and more available to everyone. And it is certainly high time to make abortion rights a voting issue in elections. The anti-abortion movement understands the high stakes of this moment. Those who support reproductive rights must as well. Now, this is the Democrat playbook. Too late to wipe outdated laws off the books. I mean, this isn't just about abortion. This is their thought process. And guess what? Outdated laws to them is the Constitution. I'm working on a video. We're going to talk a little bit about the Reagan Goldwater speech in 1964 or 5. I can't remember which. But I mean, Reagan knew all of this way back then. And we're going to talk about how a lot of patriotic presidents have known all this stuff. But in any case, this article basically proves this was written way before any of this happened. Not way before, but like in the middle of January. Obviously, they were talking about the New York thing hadn't even happened yet. What is going on here is the far left crazy liberal Democrats that want to murder babies and control everything about the way you live didn't want the conversation to be about abortion anymore. So they leaked the photo to a conservative site so it would look like a conservative did it. Projection, remember. Do the bad stuff and then blame it on them. And then, now they can ask Governor Northam to step down. The news cycle moves on. And because we as a society can't remember anything that happened more than 30 seconds ago, we're going to be chasing whatever shiny new object or squirrel they put in front of us. This is a sham. Abortion is not a constitutional right. It never was. And they're afraid because they realize that the people are starting to wake up and become a problem. Be the problem for these type of people in the world. Go out every day and be the problem. So, in summary, what is going on? Governor Northam is having a very tough time right now because of comments that he made, followed by a leaked photo. Who benefits? The only organization that truly benefits is Planned Parenthood, because now we're not talking about abortion and killing babies anymore. We're talking about racism. And how is this another symptom of the Civil War? This Times article, which I'll put in the show notes, literally talks about the Civil War. Now, it's talking about the abortion Civil War, not the Trump-Russia Civil War. But at the end of the day, it's all part of the same objective and all part of the same cabal. You know why they want to make it easier for low-income and poor people to get abortions? Because they don't want low-income and poor people to have more kids. That's why. And that's the truth. Even though people don't want to say it. We need to start saying things that make us feel uncomfortable in this country. Because if we don't, we're going to continue living in a world that doesn't truly exist. Thank you so much for listening today. If you haven't yet, please go hit the big red subscribe button. Smash the bell for notifications so you get notified whenever new content is coming out. I do have the Mueller expose that I've been working on, so that is going to come. I'm going to continue producing content throughout the week, and hopefully for Sunday and then next Monday, I have a 5-part Muellergate expose for you guys to dig your teeth into, and that's kind of going to be the big grand premiere of the channel. I thank you for all your support, any feedback. If you have any comments, please start a discussion in the comment section. This is Ricky Skittle for Pontification Nation, and I'm out.